Peace, family. It's your brother Marc, Lamont Hill. You're listening to the Classroom and the Cell podcast. And, of course, I am joined by...
Mumia Abu Jamal. Right,
right, Sean. I was thinking about you all week because we haven't been able to touch base, and so much has been going on in the world. It's been a crazy, crazy week, man. But one of the things that I've been thinking about is as we approach what will be the end of Ramadan in about 2 days, 3 days from the time of this conversation, and we're about a week past Easter, I can't help but think about the role of religion in our society and also the role of religion specifically in the black community. I wanted to start, though, maybe with a personal note. You know, I know before I went on my various faith journeys and spirituality journeys, I was sitting in Taylor Memorial Baptist Church, which was on Germantown Avenue, right before, about a half a block before Germantown in Erie. So right in Nicetown. And anybody from North Philly know Nicetown ain't nice. And although we love it, you know what I'm saying? I just don't want people hear Nicetown think it's like a suburb or something, you know. And I think about what we learned in that space. I think about the community that we built there and that we had there. And I think about faith and religion more particularly in a sort of complex way, right? There's so many things and lessons you learn from growing up in a black church and being around black people and seeing black leadership and watching people respond to trouble and stress and crisis with hope and faith and togetherness. And then there's also all the things that come with religion in terms of maybe detaching people from the material realities of their world, having them believe in otherworldly possibilities rather than the here and now. There's always the looming presence of leadership, some of whom are amazing and some of whom are predatory and exploitative.
This is a call from Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Mahanoy. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
That was the Lord. That was Lord interrupting me because I'm for my blasphemy. No, but you know, there's just all kinds of leadership. There's all kinds of models. There's all kinds of structures. How do you see the role of religion in society, and maybe even more specifically in the black community? And where did that start for you?
Well, I started very similar to you, except it wasn't in Germantown. It was in the heart of North Philly. And I actually, you know, my mother would take us to a Baptist church every Sunday, Second Pilgrim, right? But my father...
Ooh, that's a name.
Yeah. My father was an Episcopalian.
Wow.
So I would go with her to church and then sometimes with my dad's church, but these were two different worlds. And it fascinated me as a very young man. And so I was like on a journey to really study religion and experience religion in all the ways that were possible. I remember going to a Jewish synagogue in North Philly, and you know, I was just curious, and an old man there gave me a book. He said, you know, he had a very thick Germanic accent. He said, well, yeah, we have black Jews. You have a Sammy Davis Jr.? Yeah, we have that. And here, you want to find out what we're about? And he gave me a book, and I took it home, and I opened it, and it was all in Hebrew.
This is a call from Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Mahanoy. This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
It was all in Hebrew, bro. Like, you know.
Wow.
What was I going to do with that?
It's a heck of a learning curve, right? Like
yeah,
I know you're brilliant, but that'd have been a heck of a climb for you.
I ain't that brilliant. That I can tell you. But you know, I've always found, like when you talked about the black church, unlike many other communities in America, because of our condition in America, and I found this out reading W.B. Du Bois, who really, you know, goes deep and talks about this. The oldest black institution in black America is the church. Unlike in most other communities, you know, other communities that didn't experience what we experienced, the first institution was the family. Ours was the communal church because that's where family could be the freest in an unfree nation for us, you know, and that's because we're gathered around each other. And so the church has a social function, a political function, an educational function, a cultural function. You know, think about this, that especially since Reagan and the cuts in public school, people didn't learn music in school because those classes were seen as superfluous and they were cut. But people who went to church learned music in the church, either singing or instrumental. And that, that's how we kind of survived with music. And that kept us in that tradition, right? And the church for black people was everything. It was home. It was family. It was community. It was the place we learned what the boys called sorrow songs and really survival songs, And that transmuted into the blues. And it's today, really, I think, at the very core of rap and hip-hop, call and response and all that. That came from the church, man, because for us, unlike other communities, everything came from the church,
Yeah, that was our spiritual home, political epicenter, all the things you just described. And there's some beauty in it, but as you know, there was always a critique of that church, There was a way that even when the Nation of Islam entered the scene and was speaking to the black nationalists, even though they were certainly religious and in a lot of ways structurally and culturally, they were still Christian. But there's also a way that they were trying to push us away from believing in a hereafter that made us victims in the present. There's a way that they were trying to tell us to get away from the white Jesus. There's a way that they were, trying to challenge us to imagine God differently. And largely to locate God within self. At the same time that there may be an abstract, distant creator, there was also a vision that we were all, or at least for them, men, black males, that we were, God of the universe. And over time, whether it was these religious organizations that offered, alternatives to Christianity, or whether it was these radical traditions that pushed back against all religion, the more we would do this liberation work, the more we seem to be moving further and further away from these institutions. I remember being in Ferguson in 2014 and seeing so many people marveling at how, we weren't centered in the church, and the preachers weren't the leaders of the movement or the go-to advisors for the movement. If they wanted to be part of it, they had to come outside. And so, what role do you see, in light of all your critical analysis, all your brilliant thinking, including you writing a book called Faith of Our Fathers? I'm sorry, that wasn't the name of your book. What was the name of your book?
Faith of Our Fathers.
Faith of Our Fathers. Look at me, too funky for myself. In light of all of that, how do you see religion now for us as a society and as a community?
Well, I think, when you look at African American quote-unquote society, what you see is American society in microcosm, because in all American society, for the first time, the number of people who are nunners or who have no religious faith are growing and growing by leaps and bounds. And the same could be said about especially very young black people, especially those from, the ghettos of the North who never experienced that church that you grew up in or I grew up in. That church is a place, it's a house of strangers for them. And when you looked at Black Lives Matter in Ferguson and activists who were fighting against state terrorism, they were repelled by the image of black preachers. And I've heard stories about where, certain black preachers would come there and they say, bruh, you better get in your limo and get the F out of here, because we ain't trying to herd that. and they didn't grow up in that. They felt like they didn't trust these people. They tended to be people who were, bougie or, middle class or very, very wealthy. I mean, think about the big churches, right?
Yeah.
So they were outside of those structures, right? And they felt like they didn't have a critique. And they were not the people that they trusted to speak on their behalf. They were like, we can speak well. We don't need you. And so that's what we're talking about, is really social transformation on another level. What these young brothers and sisters experienced by being in black American ghettos was the absence of church, not the presence of church. And many of these churches are, if you really look at them, they're like cities in terms of size. But they're cities of people who have made it to the middle class, for the most part, and who are living lives that millions of black people don't live and have no access to And they're living separately, let me put it that way, from the poorest and the most dispossessed of Black America.
So is the solution then to encourage people to, or at least respect people's decision to engage in religious practices as long as they're tied to the proper political vision, that is to say, being close to the dispossessed, having a vision of social justice? Or do you inevitably smuggle in something unhealthy, counterproductive, even counter-revolutionary when you embrace these traditional, at least Western religions?
Not necessarily, because, again, the best of the church is, a branch, a part of the liberation movement. Martin King, right? Martin Luther King Jr., to be precise, didn't begin as a revolutionary, but I'll be damned if he didn't end as one. And
You have 1 minute left.
He was a man, just like Malcolm was a man, of profound revolutionary transformation. And they met almost together, right, in an anti-capitalist, anti-white supremacist, anti-militarist critique of the American empire. And so, Martin has a lot to say, right? And he says a lot about social transformation and fighting this system no matter what. He knew what was coming. He was bright enough and brilliant enough to see the beast coming over the mountain. But he told you, I may not get there with you. One day, we'll all make it over the mountaintop.
Was he a brilliant revolutionary because of his faith or despite it?
I think because of his faith. His faith was his foundation.
Okay.
And, listen.
Thank you for using Securus.
Oh, man,
Goodbye.
Yeah, brother, we got to build on this more. We're going to keep building on religion. This is going to probably be a part 1 for sure, talking about faith, talking about traditions. I'm not sure I agree fully with my brother Mumia. We're going to build on this to figure it out, to flesh it out. I don't know. I struggle with this question of, on the whole, if religion has done us much good. And it doesn't mean that I'm not a person of faith. It just means, I don't know how to make sense of all of this. You've been listening to the Classroom in the Cell podcast with Mumia Jamal and Marc Lamont-Hill. If you want to hear more content just like this, you can get the entire Classroom in the Cell podcast series on YouTube. Just go to Marc Lamont-Hill Official, the Marc Lamont-Hill Official YouTube channel, and it's all there. Just click on podcast, and you will find every single thing you're looking for. You can also check out other content on the Marc Lamont-Hill Official channel, including from Night School on the channel, where I cover all the topics, all the politics, all the culture. And we don't do it as a TV show or as a program, but as a big public digital classroom so we can engage and share and teach and learn and build. Check it all out on the channel. If you want to, please hit that like button. It helps the YouTube algorithms know that you're rocking with our content. Also, hit the subscribe button so you're part of the community. Also, hit that little button next to subscribe so you get updates and notifications whenever we put out new content. And if you're so inclined, hit the join button and become a monthly subscriber to the channel. We would so appreciate it as you help us build a truly independent, high-quality, radical media platform. I want to thank y'all for listening. Talk to you soon. On the Move.